It was a poor season last season, wasn't it, for Tranmere Rovers? They were picked up a lot of points in August, somewhat unconvincingly, but then they massively slumped from September onwards until around February time under Nigel Adkins, as there seemed to be some deep-rooted cultural issues there. Andy Crosby, even, need to get his name right. Andy Crosby certainly stabilised things and took Tranmere up the table with a good run of results to preserve their EFL status with some comfort in the end, preventing a repeat of 2015's relegation to the National League. And it's been a reasonable start this time around, hasn't it? 6 games, 8 points, 2 wins, 2 draws, and 2 defeats for Tranmere Rovers. The last 2 defeats coming back to back. But I think really curious to hear how much of have there been some really positive signs for Tranmere Rovers for them to take forward into the rest of the campaign, and can they be in the playoff picture this time around? And what about the rest of League Two? Who started well, and which teams are we worried about? Plenty to get stuck into then on this League Two podcast. If you like what we do here at EFL Debate, you can do us a massive favour by getting subscribed to us on YouTube and on Spotify. In the meantime, I'm delighted to be joined by my co-host and from the Super White Army, Mr. Ben Jones. Thanks so much for joining us, Ben. Really appreciate your time this morning. How would you reflect on Tranmere's start to the season?
Very stop-start. Lots of positive signs, lots of evidence that the team can grow as the season progresses. But I think even as Andy Crosby's alluded to in his own interviews, there's still a lot of work to do there. There's still some weaknesses and some little tweaks we need to make here and there to the system and to players' individual performances. But I think it's quite refreshing to hear his honesty with that, where we've been kind of used to sort of Nigel Adkins last season. Whenever we put in a horror show, he would come up with a load of platitudes that didn't really mean anything. So I think even when we, for example, beat Shrewsbury 4-0, Andy said that there was things in that game he wasn't happy about that he wanted us to improve on. And I think I like that sort of strive for professionalism and not being too distracted by the scoreline, and certainly at this stage of the season being a little bit more concerned with the performance than the individual results. So there's that to take from it. I think the new signings on the whole have done fairly well. Some of them haven't maybe had the game time, but I think on the whole they've done okay. And they've probably made us a bit more balanced than we were last year. But yeah, there's plenty to improve going forward.
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like from our conversations on WhatsApp on the start of the season, there's been a lot of positivity around the chances you've created. So I was expecting to kind of lean heavily on that in this podcast, but looking at the numbers, I was actually quite surprised because according to Who Scored, Tranmere's XG is 6.73, and they're actually overperforming that quite significantly. So, I mean, the numbers don't always say everything, and sometimes it can look different from the stands. Just wondering if you have a theory on maybe the discrepancy between how you see, Tranmere's level of chance creation and maybe what some of the numbers would say.
Yeah, I guess I'm not entirely sure how they calculate XG in League Two, if it's any different to sort of the higher leagues. But for example, I think Salford on Saturday, where although we were second best, we had some really good chances there.
Like 4 chances or something like that.
I think Charlie Whittaker had one first half where he's maybe 8 yards out on a slight angle, and the keeper's putting out stretched bottom boots, which he's kept it out, and I don't know what the XG on that was, but for me that should be going in the back of the net. And then second half, Amari Patrick has one where the ball's been kind of pulled back and he's arriving at the ball at pace and hits it pretty much straight at the keeper, where a yard either side and it's a goal. And I think at that stage we'd have gone 2-1 up. I think it would have been a bit of daylight robbery if we'd have won that game, because Salford were really good going forward, but we still created chances there. And then I think back to the Notts County game, where maybe a draw would have been fair on that day. We had lots of kind of half chances where we were building pressure, and not just we're throwing bodies at the ball, and lots of last ditch tackles and stuff, which probably doesn't translate too well on the XG.
Right.
But I think in terms of the pressure, I think we'd have been 2-2 would have probably been a fair result that day. And we just didn't quite get the rub the green we needed on that one. They had two very clear chances that you'd expect them to score from. They did, but besides that, they didn't create a whole lot. So
they had a low volume of clear-cut chances, and you had a very high volume of sort of half chances.
Yeah, we had the one that Amari Patrick scored from, that not quite an open goal, but he was unmarked, 8 to 12 yards out kind of thing, and middle of the goal. So it's probably as good as or better than having a penalty. So there was that. I think we have still. I think the middle of the park seems to be where we're having the most issues. We were missing Noah Kenner quite badly on the weekend. He was away on international duty with Liberia, and I think a lot of our problem there was Salford were able to go through the midfield so easily that we were a bit nervous of getting forward. And the wing backs, which I think I've hinted at before, if our wing backs are pinned back, then we're in a bit of trouble, because we need them for our creativity kind of thing. We've got the way our system works, we need the wing backs to stay high and do those runs in behind. And we weren't really able to do that for much of that game, other than a 15-minute spell second half. And kind of because that Salford's attacks were just being recycled, and first half it was all one-way traffic. So it's hard to know if that is just because Kenner was missing and we didn't have any kind of Sam Finley suspended. And
can you just talk to me, Ben, about that combination of Kenner and Smallwood? Because what I love the idea of it is Kenner is a real athlete, isn't he? And you've got Smallwood, who's a very experienced midfielder who knows how to run games at this level. And between them, I imagine when Kenner's available, it's a lovely combination.
Yeah, well, I think the most obvious way to explain it is actually a little bit of a negative, because after the first few games, everyone was waxing lyrical about both of them, and they're saying, "Oh, Richie's the best sort of player of that type since we had Spearing a few years ago." And then all of a sudden, after this weekend's game, it was always useless. He's past his best. He's 35. And I think that just highlights to me that Richie's got a lot of qualities, but he needs that engine next to him.
100%. That was proved absolutely true at Bradford City as well. When he didn't have the engine alongside him, he wasn't that effective. But the minute you bring Sarcevic and Patterson back into their team, Richie Smallwood goes up another level. So he's always as good as the legs that he's got around him, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the thing I like about Noah as well, he doesn't just kind of sit back and wait for what I would class like an easy intercept when the attacker's trying to play a risky final third pass or something. He's on the front foot, he's pressing, he's getting up there with the tens. So we're kind of pressing in, I don't know, like almost like a 3-3-4 at times. So we didn't do that consistently. We struggled with that at Crawley. Our press wasn't very good that day, and we had to grind that one out. But I think they complement each other really well. And the kind of obvious issue with our squad at the minute is that there isn't at the moment a replacement for Kenner when he's unavailable. Now, I think Sam Finley has 3 or 4 more games suspended, and then he's back available. So he's not a direct replacement, but he offers a bit more similar kind of qualities than Billy Blacker does, who certainly isn't that ball winner role.
No.
And I think that will help us a bit because we've got another international break in only a few weeks' time. So hopefully, I don't know quite how the fixtures have lined up, or the fitness of Sam or anything like that. But hopefully, he's available that kind of time. Otherwise, we're going to have a little bit of a headache there. And I kind of wonder if maybe, I don't quite know what would be available, but we need to have a look at the free agent market there and see if there's someone who can just fill in for the odd game, essentially. So it's quite tricky to recruit that because you're just looking for someone who's probably only going to start, 5 to 10 games.
Yeah.
Just during those international breaks, or if kind of injured, suspended, or whatever. But I think besides them, some real positives. Patrick Bruce started really strongly.
Yeah, well, I've got to give you some credit on this, Ben, because you were the one who said player at left centre half, and to be fair, when you mentioned it, I did remember that he played left centre half for Ian Everett at Barrow.
Yeah.
But then I think he'd more moved into a left wing back sort of remit after that National League title winning side, because he'd certainly played left back for Northampton Town, and so I had him totally in my head as that kind of up and down role. But he is quick and strong as well, and so in those 1v1 duels, I imagine it takes a lot to get past him.
Yeah, I think what I saw when we signed him was, although he's taller and better in the air than O'Connor, he's got similar kind of qualities with the defending the 1v1 duels. And in most of the games we've played, when we've been kind of had little spells where we're on top, we're still susceptible to the counter because we get the wing back so high, and Richie isn't the most mobile, so there's always that possibility of a counter through the middle, or even just a ball over the top. So with O'Connor at right centre back and Brough at left centre back, they're both quite athletic, they're both fairly quick. They're not your standard centre back profile, so they it's helped us quite a lot there, and we've snuffed out a lot of counters, I would say, before they even get to the final third. But also he is taller than O'Connor, and taller than Connor Wood, who played there at the back end of last season when we had the spell under Crosby there. So he's it helped us quite a bit in terms of defending set pieces and long balls and so on, which was probably our main Achilles heel in that 13-game spell at the back end of last year. There was a few sides who exposed it, like Accrington and Harrogate, who kind of exposed us to the long ball a bit there. So I think he's really helped us with that. Not to say that it isn't still a little bit of a grey area for us. I think the game against Gillingham, we should have been able to see that out 1-0. But, because we by no means did we play them off the park or anything, but we were slightly the better side. Good value for 1-0, and essentially we struggled a little bit at the end of the game with some long balls and set pieces, and we couldn't just see that through. So he's helped. Similar with Nathan Smith, another really good signing.
Yes.
So I think there's a lot of positive things there. I'd say just a big question mark in the middle at the moment, both because of the defensive vulnerability and also then the fact that when we are feeling a bit vulnerable, our wing backs seem to retreat back a little bit, and that's limiting us getting forward. You've got quite depending on who plays there, it can be quite a young pair of number 10s. We've had Taylor Harris and Charlie Whittaker there.
Yeah, you like Taylor Harris, don't you?
Yeah, I think he's very raw, but he's quite direct, and he started well. Didn't do too well in the Tin Pot Cup a couple of nights ago, but I don't think anyone really cares too much about that. So he's quite good. I think likewise with Charlie, you can see he's very good on the ball. He's got quite a good footballing brain, and his movement's good. He's good carrying the ball, which we kind of need our attackers to be with the way we kind of move around.
I think, Ben, maybe I think you always want in that front three, you want one really creative guy, and I think that's Whittaker.
Yeah,
You want one strong centre forward who can be the focal point, and I think that's Ironside.
yeah,
And then you want one pacey type, whether that's Taylor Harris or Amari Patrick. But
yeah.
I think whoever you choose, you want that kind of blend of those three qualities, and hopefully you can find that equilibrium.
Yeah, for sure. I think, we started the season with it being Taylor Harris, and Mari Patrick's kind of moved up there of late. I don't quite know what's gone on with Ethan Bristow. He had not a great game against Notts County. He was kind of at fault for the first goal, and we've not seen him in the 2 games since. But there's been no mention of anything. So I don't know if there's a little injury or something there. We kind of in the dark slightly on that.
Yeah.
Because I do think that he's part of our best 11, and
Yeah, agreed.
Hopefully
we saw
he'll
what
get
was it, the 22-23 season where Ethan Bristow was one of your best players with Josh Cogley.
I lost track because the way the years are kind of muddled with COVID still. But yeah, it was probably about 3 years ago, wasn't it? So yeah, it could have been that season. Yeah, he did really well that year, and he kind of grew into the season, and maybe it'll be similar this year, especially with him not playing a huge amount of football over the past 18 months. But yeah, I think Brough played left wing back at Salford, and I think that was part of the reason we retreated a bit defensively, because he's more defensive minded than both Ethan Bristow and Amari Patrick are, who have played left wing back. And I also think we missed Brough at left centre back. It meant Jordan Turnbull stepped in, who had a poor game. So I think we made a mistake in that. If Bristow wasn't available, I would have still kept Brough at left centre back and just put Amari Patrick at left wing back, where he's done a decent job. It's not the ideal scenario, but I think keeping Brough where he's played really well for 4 or 5 games would have been preferential.
Yeah, I think I would always advocate for not changing too much of that team. I would rather have a suboptimal solution in one position than juggle the team up, because I think that's how you lose the
absolutely
dynamic.
So got that going on.
How's the Ironside looking so far?
I don't know how much of a pre-season he had with Doncaster. I would say he looks like he needs 4 weeks to get up to pace.
Right. Okay.
He's done good, little bits where you can see the link plays kind of building there.
Yeah.
It's hard to take too much into account from the game against Notts Forest under 21s, because they're just kids, and you would expect him to bully them, really.
Yeah.
If he wasn't a big question mark. So, and then the Salford game, we were so kind of poor first half that it's hard to judge him on that as well.
Sure.
So we'll see how he develops over the next 4 weeks or so.
You know what I think about Joe Ironside, though, Ben? I think he's going to be a really good facilitator. I think we've spoken about this. One of the reasons why Paul Mullin scored 32 goals for Cambridge that earned him the move to Wrexham was because you had Ironside, winning the physical duels and aerials and doing a lot of the legwork that kind of freed Mullin up a bit. And so that's great that you've got a centre forward when he's up to speed that can do that. But then you've also got to make sure that there's a goal scoring potential elsewhere in the team to fulfill. I think Ironside can chip in with goals, but the question is, well, can we get goals out of Amari Patrick? I think the answer is yes. Can Charlie Whittaker chip in? Hopefully. Can Taylor Harris chip in? Hopefully. You need to make sure Richie Smallwood, maybe with late runs, and Owen Kenner. Whether you think that you've got players who can sort of profit from Ironside's graft.
Yeah, I think we can't kind of underplay the importance of set pieces as well. I've said a few times we were poor at both ends of the pitch last season with set pieces. I can't quite remember what we might have been the lowest scorers from set pieces last year.
Probably.
And you had at the other end, you had Bromley and Walsall with probably 25 goals apiece from set pieces. So if we can kind of bridge that gap a bit, help with the goals, and we have seen the odd goal from kind of Nathan Smith so far. He got the first one at Crawley, which was quite an important moment, because Crawley had played fairly well first half, and then we got that first goal, and we were just able to use the kind of experience, like as Scott Lindsay alluded to, that we had over them and managed the game, and we got the second and killed it. So those set pieces are really important. I think in terms of the goal output at the top end of the pitch, the current rate Amari is going at isn't sustainable. He's not going to score 40 goals, so
No.
we can rule that out. I wouldn't rule out him scoring 20. We would consider he's already on 5.
Yeah. I do think he could be the biggest goal threat in the 11. I don't know whether you'd agree with that.
Yeah, I would say so, but especially with the way the system kind of is, because when he's playing in the 10, it's not really a 10 position. It's kind of like a free roll to roam between kind of the wing, the top two, dropping into the pocket, wherever kind of he feels he can find the space to isolate a defender 1v1, which is where he's strong, and then shift the ball, and we've seen him score anywhere from 30 yards to 10 yards. So if he can get a clean sighted goal, he's kind of at least hitting the target more often than not at the moment. And he's not kind of tamely hitting the ball either, so it's causing keepers issues with that. So I think we can expect him to score more goals, but not at the current rate. And then I say set pieces, we'd hope the likes of Smith and Norman and so on would chip in with kind of 5 apiece. And you're then looking at the ones you alluded to. I mean, I know what you're saying with Ironside being more of a facilitator, but I would kind of set a benchmark for him of can he get us 10 goals?
Oh yeah, I think he can do that. Yeah,
and then
if he plays enough games, he'll get 10 goals.
Yeah, if he can get us kind of 10 goals, I think along with the goals you'll get from Amari, and then the likes of Whittaker and Harris and Davison off the bench, maybe you can chip in with kind of a few apiece. It's still a development season for Whittaker, so I don't want to kind of put too much expectation on him. I think there's a lot of good signs there that he's technically strong, and he's got a good football brain, and his movement's good and all these kind of things. But as we had kind of heard from some Notts fans in the summer, he kind of still gets bullied a little bit. So there was kind of a moment in the Gillingham game where he picked the ball up just inside their half and beat 2 or 3 players, and was nearly through goal. And that it didn't quite materialise, but I think their defenders saw that, and then the next couple of times he got the ball, they just basically kicked him and didn't let him get going. So he needs to kind of, I guess, be able to ride those challenges. You kind of see Amari, when he picks up the ball, he knows that players are going to try and do the same thing to him, but he manages to use his body strength and wrestle that space, and then uses pace and technical ability to kind of burst past them. So I think that's where we'll hopefully see the development over the course of the season for Whittaker, and I do think by the second half of the season, he could be really influential there. So I guess how quick that learning curve goes will have a big influence on us.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big believer in the second season idea. We've spoken about it with loan players. I think it can be true with permanent players as well. He's had that initial senior experience at Notts County and actually showed some flashes. I remember a game at Gillingham that they had at the start of his time there, and he looked very creative, and I liked his link-up play. So there's definitely some ingredients there, and I think if he can get up to speed with League Two football, then hopefully he can do well for you. Just to round off on the Tranmere chat, Ben. Are you? Is it nice to feel at least? I know Tranmere Rovers' standards as a club is much higher than this, but is it nice to feel having looked in danger at the beginning of the 23-24 campaign, having looked in danger for much of the 24-25 campaign, to feel like you're a bit of a class above, the bottom teams in League Two? I mean, that's a starting point, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully we get confirmation of that this weekend against Newport. It'd be nice to kind of win that 2 or 3-0, and then we've got a clear trend that we are better than those kind of teams. and I guess it just gives a bit of peace of mind to the fans because there's still all the off the pitch turmoil.
Of course, yeah,
I think Andy Crosby's doing a really good job of
yeah,
not peepering over the cracks, but sort of holding the team and the fans together, kind of thing. It would be very easy for it to just go very toxic, and I think he's doing a really good job of managing that situation.
I probably need to give Andy Crosby a bit more credit than I have done, because I wouldn't have been mad on the appointment at the time, but actually the signs that I'm seeing so far are pretty positive.
Yeah, and then I guess kind of after that, we're now in this weird position where you speak to a few fans and maybe the more rational ones kind of benchmarking as, are we going to finish somewhere in that like 10th to 14th kind of region was the preseason kind of chat. Certainly with the people I speak to, and there hasn't been too much so far this season that's kind of changed that view. We 2 wins, 2 draws, 2 losses. It's pretty much as middle of the road as you can get. The performances have reflected that. There's been good, there's been bad, there's been bits for improvement. So it is in a way kind of the transition season on and off the pitch. But
it's a transition, and it's not a transition because it's also the situation is exactly the same as it was.
We don't actually. We've got less information now on the whole takeover thing than we did this time last year. But transition in the sense that we've got 12 new players. That might even be 14 now. I can't remember if that includes the 2 new signings. And then we've kind of got a different system now, a completely different system. The kind of 3-4-2-1 isn't really a traditional kind of Tranmere system, I wouldn't say. So it's a bit of a cultural change as well. And then there's enough kind of bits within there that, with rub of the green, you could see a scenario where we get a bit of momentum. We maybe bring in 1 or 2 players in January that add to the squad, and then come March time, we're sat just outside the playoffs and we've still got something to play for in the season. Which hasn't been the case for the last 3 years. We've kind of, when we've got to April, we've had nothing to play for. I mean, even last year when we were in trouble because of the run Andy Crosby took us on, we, although we didn't confirm safety till second to last game of the season, we finished 9 points clear. And so I think it would be nice if we kind of got into that last 6 to 8 game running and would still had a mathematical chance of the playoffs, and then I would be quite happy with an upper mid-table finish around the 10th kind of region. It's not really a great season for the club with the stature of the club.
I think you've got to be realistic about where you've come from and sort of now manage it.
It's also breaking a sort of 5 or 6 year downtrend where there's still a bit of a grudge over the whole League One demotion thing, but then after that the club didn't really manage certain things too well.
I totally agree. So it was like relegation from League One in 1920, and then playoffs, then 9th, then like lower mid-table.
We've dropped like 3 or 4 places each year essentially.
Exactly.
And I think the kind of disappointing thing was that first year in League Two, when we kind of had the mess with Keith Hill and whatever. I still think that's kind of the best football we've played for quite a while when James Vaughan was fit. And the 11 they had.
Too lively, Ben.
I think the 11 we had until those kind of couple injuries hit was still, in my opinion, by far the best in that league that year. And absolutely. We just, due to having a pragmatic chairman who is an accountant, we didn't, and it being during COVID when clubs were losing money, we didn't kind of take advantage of the situation we were in where it was a low points tally to finish top 3. We were the best team in the league. We were the most informed team in the league. No one really wanted to grab the league by the scruff of the neck. And if we'd have brought 2 players in that January, we'd have certainly got top 3 and probably, in my opinion, won that league. And we didn't do that.
Yeah, the standard of League Two was much better in the 1920 season, I thought, than in the 2021 campaign. So a bit
well,
of
essentially the best two sides that season, maybe not for consistency, but for actual quality, were ourselves and Bolton. I thought, Cheltenham were the most consistent, but I thought in terms of the actual football, it was kind of ourselves and Bolton who also had that sort of second half of the season run. We missed an opportunity there. We had another opportunity, was it 2 years later, under Mellon, when we finished 8th or 9th?
No, I think it was the following season. It was the 21-22 campaign.
Could have been, yeah. It's still a bit of a blur, that time scale for me. But that was when we had kind of Josh Dacres-Cogley at right back, and we were just crying out for a centre forward, for him to feed, essentially. We didn't do it. And it's just been a bit of a spiral. So Andy Crosby's done a really good job of hopefully stopping that rot. If we can push back up the table, and in an ideal world you get the playoffs, but if we could finish 10th, that would present progress.
It's a step forward, isn't it? In terms of the sides that Tranmere have faced so far, then Ben, is there any teams that have kind of caught your eye early doors?
There's not been any kind of amazing performance. I mean, Salford were very good going forward for 50, 60 minutes. They were extremely wasteful, and maybe in quite a few circumstances did all the hard work to get into positions and then lost composure and snatched at shots or took a bizarre touch or did something, and they could have scored 4 just in the first half in that game. So they, from that point of view, they were really impressive, but a bit exposed at the back. So I wouldn't say that they stood out as they're definitely going to be top 3 or anything. I would say Crawley looked a lot better than a team that's down at the bottom. They struggled with, like Scott Lindsay said, a lack of game management and know-how. But in terms of their actual football and whatnot, they looked a lot better than a team that will be bottom 5.
Yeah, well, I thought apparently Chimanga played quite well that day.
Yeah, I think they had quite a few who did okay. Was it Harry McCurdy was a bit of a threat in that game. He was a bit unlucky not to score. I think Patrick Brough made a really good clearance at one point. Not quite off the line, but I think McCurdy had chipped the keeper and Brough was kind of tracking back and headed it over the bar.
Adi Adiemo, he impressed me in the game at Crewe that I saw. He's got some good feet, I think, Adi, the right wing back.
Yeah, so I think with them, I would be very surprised if they finish in that kind of bottom 4 or 5. I would put them a few places higher than that, based on what I saw.
Right.
I think Notts County were pretty much what I expected. I've got 2 of the better / best strikers in the league there. Jatta made a massive difference when he came on, and he played a really nice flick that led to their second goal. And
Dennis is a threat, isn't he? He doesn't stop running.
Yeah, he's like the old-fashioned fox in the box kind of thing. He sniffed out a back post tap in for the first, and he was kind of there or thereabouts for the second, even though he didn't get that one. And then but the rest of the team is very, there wasn't that much to shout about. So I wouldn't be surprised if they had a playoff push on the strength of their strikers, but they're not going to.
Well, I would actually say on the strength of their defence, because I do think that they actually defend their box quite well. Like Rob McDonald, they're without Matty Platt at the moment, but I think Rob McDonald's actually looked very good this season. Now he's been moved to the middle centre half role, because the problem you had for him last season was he tended to play as a right centre half and a 3. He's left-footed. A, he's left-footed, and B, he's not actually very quick. So as you can imagine, it's absolute nightmare for him playing on the right. But you put him in the middle, and actually he looks pretty assured. And I think with the support of Sonny El Joffrey and certainly Jacob Bede, I think they've got that solidity, and also helped by maybe having natural wing backs like when Jody Jones is available, it's still Barry Cotter who plays as the right wing back, and Jones plays further forward. So they've got those sort of solid foundations now.
Yeah, like I kind of alluded to earlier, they made quite a series of last ditch or just before kind of last ditch blocks in that game from shots where we were in strong positions. I mean, there was one where Amari Patrick's essentially placed it bottom corner, it's beating the keeper, and one of their defenders, I don't know which one, got a block. They somehow got a goal kick from it, but it was a great block slash save. But yeah, they were very good from that point of view. The midfield was kind of a bit wishy-washy for me. We did have Noah and Kenneth play that day, and I thought our midfield was a bit better than theirs.
Right.
So, yeah, I wouldn't expect
Yeah,
them to go
Matty
on.
Palmer hasn't quite hit the levels that he found before his injury
No,
in November 2023.
no, I think he might. I can't quite remember the way our goal built because we kind of stole the ball off them in a press, but he might have been kind of involved somehow in that situation as well.
Right.
So yeah, I think a draw would have been fair that day, and maybe on the basis that they've got two strong strikers, they're a little bit ahead of us. But then they're not a long way ahead by any means, I wouldn't say. And then who else have we played this kind of Shrewsbury?
Well,
we don't need to go into them.
Okay. Colchester, what you drew 1-1 with them on the opening day. They scored equaliser.
Yeah,
Do you think
there was nothing to really report with them. We let them have the possession. They didn't do anything with it for the majority of the game. I don't think they had a shot until 55 minutes.
Right.
We then, it was first game of the season. I think we then started to fade on fitness slightly because a few of our players signed late in the preseason window.
Right, yeah.
So they didn't have full preseasons and whatnot. So we started to fade. They put a bit of pressure. They didn't have any clear chances and they scored a worldie where the guys spun and immediately hit it top bins from 20 yards.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I wouldn't. We were better than them that day. It was a one-off game, so I haven't really seen them since. But the points return isn't too hot.
Sure.
So at the minute, I think they've got a fair way to go to kind of get to where people thought they would be with that kind of playoff push, maybe a bit higher.
Yeah.
They've got the right manager to do it, but at the moment, I would say they've got a long way to go. And then Gillingham was the odd one. I didn't see too much different to what we've seen from Gillingham the last few years in terms of they were very strong defensively. But that was kind of, they had a very kind of a low block. They sat off us for the most part. And with the way their centre backs are, they're very comfortable with balls into the box and defending all those situations. So that's kind of their real strength. And
yeah, it's been a common theme for Gillingham, hasn't it, Ben? In terms of they've often started seasons well. In the last couple of seasons, they've won lots of 1-0s that could have gone either way and given them a high points tally early on. And the big question, which I'm really curious about, is can this time around have they got that bit more durability? I still think there's question marks there, but I think with somebody like Gareth Ainsworth, I'm inclined to trust him to get them certainly in and around the playoffs. I don't see an Ainsworth team dropping off entirely.
Oh no, they're not going to do what they did last year. Or probably not even the year before. I think pre-season, I was looking at them as kind of around the edge of that playoffs position. I might have put them.
Yeah, I had them 8th.
Yeah, I think I had them either 7th or 8th, and they might be a little bit better than that based on having seen a few teams so far. And although I've not seen MK Dons yet, I'm not sure that too many other teams that are up there will run the distance. So I think that defensive solidity, the manager, they might actually be good for the playoffs at least this year.
Tell you what I do like with that 3-4-1-2 that they've got is that because they've got Robbie McKenzie in the middle of a back three, it does give them certain flexibility because they can move McKenzie into midfield if they want to change formation. And they've got wing backs who are very comfortable playing as fullbacks. So that flexibility, I think, could help them. And then I do wonder if Ainsworth is the kind of manager who's going to get the best out of Josh Andrews. You know, he's a striker that struggled to find his feet in the EFL over the last few years through one thing or another. Probably had his best into Accrington Stanley, but I think in a Gareth Ainsworth team, he's the kind of manager who's likely to sort of maximise his strengths. And certainly, you could only learn from someone like Sam Vokes as a young target man.
I guess the big thing for them about whether they can finish top 3 and sustain where they are is, against sides that like having the ball sitting in the low blocks fine and using the target men, but kind of if they stay up there, at that top end of the table for a while, more and more teams will sit off them.
Yeah.
And not allow their kind of target men to have as much room around them for the knockdowns and all those kind of things. And at that point, how do Gillingham manage with this sustained pressure and maybe unlocking teams that have strong centre backs in the air and whatnot? And I think I saw a little bit of Ainsworth's post match against Bromley. He said they they did really well in terms of battling with Bromley, but they lacked a little bit with the guile, and I think they were quite fortunate in that game with the penalty they got, where the guys essentially dived into the keeper and cons the ref a bit. But I'm sure there'll be one that will go against them at some point. But yeah, I think for them to get top 3, they're going to have to be a bit better with the ball and sustaining pressure. So we'll see with them. So yeah, it's an interesting week. So as I say, there's not really anyone we've played yet that I would say they're definitely going to be top 3.
Yeah, do you know what I'm interested in looking at the table, Ben? I don't know what your take is. I think the area between 8th and let's say 14th is actually possibly as strong as the current top 7. So I think there's teams in the current top 7 that I would maybe question whether they're going to stay there. And there's teams, still very early days, isn't it? But I think there's teams in mid-table that I'm confident are going to put a run together and possibly finish in that top 7.
Yeah, you've got some of the pre-season kind of favourites there. You've obviously got MK Dons, the biggest budget in the league. They've got so much player turnover. You would imagine they'll get better every week. They can go and sign another 5 players in January if they really need to. And then you've kind of got a few wild card teams there, like Salford Knots, Fleetwood, Bristol Rovers. So you don't know what they're going to do. And then, the teams from kind of, especially sort of 2nd to 6th in my mind. So you've got Swindon, Walsall, Grimsby, Bromley, Crewe. There's still, to different contexts, there's a bit of question marks over can they sustain those positions. Bromley, I think most people would be surprised if they were anywhere near that picture at the end of the season. And then,
I think they'll definitely be top half again, Bromley.
I think, sorry, go on.
Well, yeah, I think they'll be top half again. I think they've got some really solid foundations. My worry for them would be they rely very heavily on their set piece threat.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I would just question whether can they find another way? That would be what I'd be really curious to see. I'm open-minded to it. I hope they can find that other way, because they are very good defensively and they're a good set piece team. But if they need to find some open play creativity, I'm curious to see how that.
I think from what I've seen, bits on Sky TV and highlights and whatnot so far, I think the best 3 footballing sides in the division so far are probably Swindon, Grimsby, and Crewe. I think, although Chesterfield like to dominate the ball and control games, I don't think they're quite as fluid yet. I don't think they've really got going.
Yeah.
Whereas from what I've seen with Swindon, they pass it around, but not for the sake of it. They're very kind of direct with their short passing, if that makes any sense. They kind of move up the pitch quickly.
There's an urgency to them.
So I've been really impressed when I've seen Swindon. We had question marks over them pre-season. We weren't quite sure how Holloway would do second season, when we're still not really. But in terms of what they've actually produced so far, they're probably the best side I've seen, even though I've not seen them play Tranmere. I've seen them in 2 or 3 games on Sky. So be interested to see how they run. And then I know you were very hot on Grimsby, but I don't know, I just feel like there's something still missing there for me when I've seen them. I wouldn't be surprised if they were comfortably top 7, but there was a few people who call top three, and I don't know. I'm just seeing something missing, and I think
what's missing for you?
I don't know. It's something that I just can't quite put my finger on. I think the way they were 3-0 up at MK Dons, who were down to 10 men, and let them back into the game. And I just wonder if that bit of kind of game management to an extent and know-how, I don't know if they're missing the ugliest side of the game a little bit that you need in League Two.
They've got Kieran Green, though, who's very good at that side of things. And then I know what you're saying, but I think it's a bigger. I understand the concerns about letting them back in with 10 men. I think that's fair, but I think it's a bigger compliment to Grimsby that when the game was 0-0 and there was no game state, Grimsby Town dominated that first half and raced into a 3-0 lead. And then the second half, bit of nerves, MK Dons through the kitchen sink, they didn't have anything to lose and all that kind of stuff. And sometimes it can create a nervy, ending. But I would prefer that kind of result than maybe you're outplayed for 70 minutes and then the opposition go down to 10 men and you make a late fight back and win 3-2, because that 3-2 is more based on game state and opportunism, whereas the 3-2 that Grimsby had was, we're going there and we're going to outplay you from the first minute. And that's MK Dons with the biggest budget in the league, with the manager joint with Ainsworth, the best CV in the league. That was a massive statement of intent from Grimsby. And yes, the second half you can ask questions and pick holes and whatever, but that first half I think was a real statement to the sign of what Grimsby Town are capable of.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think from the football I've seen, they're amongst the top three footballing sides so far. But I think the little nugget there is that Chesterfield and MK Dons haven't really got going yet.
Sure.
But they haven't got going, but they're still there or thereabouts in terms of points. Chesterfield 13 off 7, and I think they've got a few gears to climb up yet. And certainly MK Dons have quite a lot of gears, and they just need to keep adding players that shouldn't be in League Two yet. So whether they have an embarrassment of riches, they struggle to keep people happy and can't get the fluency, time will tell on that. But I would expect Chesterfield certainly to get into that top three picture. And it's probably very open after that at the moment. There's, like you alluded to, there's 12, maybe up to 15 teams that would like to think they can still get playoffs. We're very early in the year, teams having bad spells. Now we've seen it so many times that they can just run through second half of the season.
Bristol Rovers, I think, could come good.
I think did they only pick up 1 point in the first 3 or 4 games? And I think I said straight away, I saw their fans panicking, and it was just way too early for that. And it didn't even take a month, and look, they're into the top half, I think, already.
They're 3 points off the playoffs now, so they're right back in it, and it shows at this stage of the season, things can change very quickly.
Yeah, and I think in the pre-season chat, I said that normally in any league, you want to give it 10 games before you assess it. But I thought that this year with League Two, because there wasn't too many kind of standout sides, there wasn't too many basket case sides, it was very even in terms of the squad quality, in my opinion, that it might take 15 or 20 games before we get a clear picture this year of where everyone's at. I think you could, if you were looking at any two sides and you're trying to pick a best 11 between two sides, you would probably pick a handful of players from both teams, whereas in some years it could be 9 players from one and 2 from the other. I don't see that too much this year. So I think there's a lot of variables that could change this League Two this year, and it could be quite an exciting division because of that, where it's going to be unpredictable for so long. Other than maybe the bottom 4 or so, which
I was going to ask you about that actually, because seeing as you've said Crawley Town are in a slightly different, you'd put them maybe a little bit of a bracket above possibly the bottom 4. Are we looking very early on? I know Accrington Stanley, Cheltenham Town, Newport County, and Shrewsbury as the 4 teams that you would say we're worried about. Would you put Barrow or Barnet into those conversations? How would you weigh it up?
Well, the interesting thing is the bottom 6, I think, is actually currently in the order I predicted it pre-season.
Oh wow, that's impressive.
It's obviously very early on. I know that Shrewsbury picked up a result the other day, and I think they might have done in the Tin Pot game midweek as well. So maybe a couple last-minute signings have helped change the impetus a
They
little
got
bit.
a winger on loan from Arsenal, didn't they? It was
Yeah,
Ishmael.
and I think the bottom three, Newport, Cheltenham, Accrington, are significantly worse than the majority. And with kind of Shrewsbury, they've probably got slightly better players, but it's that negative momentum, and we've seen that 2 years running with Forest Green and Carlisle, who have both had big budgets and a few decent players. The negative momentum has just carried them straight through the division in the wrong sense. So that was kind of where a lot of the negative sentiment came with Shrewsbury. I guess that's similar, possibly with Cheltenham, albeit they came down last year. They've kind of continued that nosedive. They had this last-minute takeover that they brought a couple players in, but I think that squad's still very thin.
I think it's tough for Cheltenham when that takeover is going in. It does feel like a lot of the focus from the club's point of view has gone into that takeover, and maybe that had an impact on what they were able to do in the summer transfer window and certain practical things around the sort of the running of the club.
Yeah. So again, I think Accrington and Newport have the two worst squads. It's 2 years running now that for the whole of last season, and then so far this year, Newport are statistically the worst team in the league.
Newport, though, I would argue, have had some tough fixtures. So you look at it, they've had Bristol Rovers last time out, they had Cambridge away, they had MK Dons at home, who've got the biggest budget, they had Salford at home, Grimsby away, after getting 4 points from Notts County and Crawley in their first two. So I would argue that they've had a rough end of the deal in terms of fixtures, and that still carries on until the end of September and the beginning of October. But then in October, mid-October onwards, they've got Accrington Stanley away, Cheltenham at home, Harrogate away. I would argue that run of games between sort of October and November, I think that's probably going to tell us a bit more about where Newport County are at.
I guess that kind of plays into the same sort of 15 to 20 game benchmark I was talking about for the top end of the table. I guess it also applies at the bottom end with some of those clubs that we don't quite know where they are yet. I think I was expecting Barrow to do a bit worse this year, and they are kind of down that end. They lost what was their real strength, which is essentially their central midfield. So there's a lot of work for them to do there. It's quite rare that I think that promoted clubs go down. I'm not sure if did Hartlepool come up and go straight back down?
Hartlepool, they went down to they stayed up for a year because they had a good
of course they did, because Connor Jennings, I remember signing them.
And then they went down the year after, I think.
So I think Oldham look better than the drop, I would say. I haven't seen any of Barnet yet. I think Oldham have got the right manager in terms of staying up. And then
do you know what? Signing Michael Mellon, I think, was huge as well, because I think he could be the difference maker for Oldham.
Yeah, we were talking about the rest of their squad's probably quite average, but in terms of the strikers, it was very poor until they signed him. And there was a few of us kind of saying, well, would you have Mellon at your club? Is he the best in terms of training? But you can't really doubt the fact that he scored goals at this level. And I guess he's probably signs there knowing that he needs to have a good season. In terms of, if he doesn't have a good season, he's probably falling into the National League on his own, regardless of the club situation.
Do you know what I wonder about, though, Ben, with Michael Mellon, is that I wonder if it suits him when the whole dynamic of the attack is built around him. Because he had a brilliant first half of the 23-24 season at Morecambe under Derek Adams. And it was like he's physical, he's constantly pestering defences, his link-up plays great, he can score from anywhere off the pitch. He's like one of the top strikers in League Two. But then he's had a couple of stints since then. I think he had one stint in League One that didn't go to plan, and one at Bradford where he was kind of competing with Gavin Kavanagh. and didn't necessarily pull up trees there. But I just wonder, like in a team where it's like he's the main go-to guy, I wonder if that's going to suit him more, perhaps.
Yeah, I'd say so, and I think there's less emphasis on the collective, like there is at someone like Bradford as well, where I'd imagine Graham Alexander's very much about this is the system, you need to play within the system.
Yeah,
and it doesn't really allow for maybe getting the best out of someone like that who, as you've alluded to, maybe does a little bit better when they've got a little bit of freedom in terms of their role. So yeah, we'll probably see much better of him. I would therefore expect Alden to be fine. I'd be absolutely amazed if they were top half, but I think they would they'll be fine.
I do you know what it is? I think they've got a 4 out of 10 squad in general, and I think Michael Mellon is an 8 out of 10 signing.
Yeah.
And it's that kind of signing that can transform a 4 out of 10 squad into maybe 5 or 6. So
and I think also with the the manager, who's obviously a bit of a favourite around these parts as well, with him, what you're going to get there is maybe not the best football. It's going to be very frustrating at times, but they're going to grind out results even against the better sides. And we've seen, they picked up the draw at MK Dons and so on, and they've drawn quite a lot of games, so they've not been too far off. And I think they'll be perfectly fine, and probably even finish roughly where they are now. So I think they'll be fine. But I haven't seen Barnet, so I don't really.
I've been Barnet are probably the ones that I've been most disappointed by so far. I think I was sold on them in pre-season because I did have that concern. If I instinctively I was thinking, is that style going to translate to the higher level? Are they going to be too open, a bit like Notts County were? And speaking to a Barnet fan, Mem said, no, they're actually very good at counter pressing, and they didn't concede anything in the National League, even against the top teams. And I was thinking maybe they're so good against the ball, which maybe Notts County were, and it's going to work out, and they're going to swarm over opponents and actually be really good. But actually, they have looked pretty much like Notts County when they first came up,
without necessarily some of the standout players that Notts had.
Exactly, yeah. So, Barnet, I think, do need 1 or 2 tweaks. I like the stylistic identity they've got. I'm not saying rip it up entirely, but they need a few tweaks just to make sure they've got the balance right.
Yeah, so I think with them, it's quite hard to place, and it might almost be a case of how good do some of the teams at the bottom end up as to whether they end up in trouble. We as we've spoken about, we don't quite know yet if Cheltenham, Newport and Shrewsbury are going to continue to struggle or if they'll pick up. And maybe how some of those sides do will kind of depend on whether Barnet end up in a scrap. If those kind of sides all pick up and Barnet find themselves in 20th or whatever, they start to panic and have a bit of a free fall. It's not hard in League Two for a side second half of the season to know that.
Do you know what it is though, Ben? I still feel with Barnet, even though they've had a poor start to the season, they can create a high volume of half chances because they have their wing back high up. I really like Ryan Glover when he plays as the left wing back because I think he can be very dangerous. They can get crosses into the box from good positions. So I do back them to create a high volume of chances. The problem they have, I think, is that when they give up a chance and they'll do it 3 or 4 times a game, it's always a golden opportunity. And so I think if Barnet can keep the positive aspects of their game, but somehow just get a bit better on defensive transitions, I think they could start to tick off results because I think at their best, I still think they're capable of having a one-off game where they absolutely batter somebody. But what gets you points over the course of a season is balance, and that's what Barnet need to find now.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, I think we've had a good podcast there, Ben, and I think we'll round it up. So pleasure to have your company as always, Ben, and good luck against Newport on Saturday. Thanks everyone for watching. This has been the EFL Debate League 2 podcast, and we'll see you again next week.